Welcome, dear friends, to Kardec Radio at 11 p.m. We are here live to study another chapter of the book Evolution in Two Worlds. This is time for us to nourish our souls. And Kardec Radio is here to open this session with a prayer. So join us. Join us in a prayerful moment as we prepare ourselves for another level of understanding of ourselves, the resources we have at hand. May we feel the presence of our guardian angels, of the protecting spirits, of the guides of humanity on earth. We have lived many lives, dear Lord, not knowing of many things. And finally, in this life, we are granted new opportunities to understand ourselves in life. Tonight, we ask for your permission to understand more about the creative forces of our soul, so we can be better co-creators and rejoice in living this life. We feel your loving embrace and would like to share this love with everyone whom we're connecting with, either live or on demand. May our loved ones also receive the shower of this healing light. With your permission, counting on your protection, may we begin this session of study, love, and brotherhood. And so be it. What a joy! Welcome, friends! Can you believe this book, Evolution in Two Worlds, psychographed in 1958 by two mediums, Chico Xavier and Valdo Vieira. In 6 months, they brought us 40 chapters. 2 prefaces, 40 chapters. This far, we have come almost to halfway of the book. Ay, 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 joy to the world, the Lord has come. That's how we feel. It's an achievement, our collective achievement, because it's a book that really requires our diligent efforts, collectively speaking. And we're thankful to God that we're given this opportunity. Today we're going to study about sex and the spiritual body. But we cannot enter this topic without opening our minds more deeply. Do you know of that tale? It's a Buddhist tale that says of the willingness of an apprentice to know more from the master. So he went all the way up to the mountain to gather together with the master. The master received him and he entered the house of the master. Actually, it was like a very simple house. The master welcomed him with a smile, offered some hot tea, and was preparing the hot tea. Meanwhile, the apprentice started talking. Blah 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 blah, and couldn't stop talking. But he was talking about how excited he was, how far he has come to know more. And then the master started pouring water on the cups. Suddenly, the water was spilling. The apprentice turned to the master and said, "Master, the water is spilling." The master smiled and said, "I know. That's our mind. To absorb the new, we need to empty our cups." Tonight, to understand the chapter we're going to see, Luiz talking about sex, empty our cups. If we bring the conceptions and misconceptions of many lives, we won't be able to absorb it. We're going to be simply twisting the teachings to fit into our beliefs or our needs, and that's dangerous. So, what do? Dispose ourselves of the conceptions we brought this far and be open to the new. Because Andre Luiz is revolutionary in this chapter. He makes us feel sex in a different way. For many people, sex is simply about pleasure. Hmm? For others, it's sinful. For some, it's just about reproduction. What is sex for you? Whatever it is, let's put it aside as much as we can and absorb the new, or we won't be able to absorb it. We're going to use some slides, not too many pictures, some pictures, but slides just to focus on André Luiz saying his teachings breaking down together. But as we every night we talk about the need of patience, the need of perseverance and endurance, because this is simply it's simple but comprehensive at the same point. He doesn't spare words, but he repeats the concepts, otherwise we won't understand. André Luiz gives us bifocal lenses. We can see from afar and near us. So we are practicing this understanding of life in two worlds. Okay, are you ready for the CrossFit of the soul tonight? Are you? Have a glass of water, have a cookie if you want, a piece of bread or something, but let's focus. This is not possible to listen and understand while browsing and surfing the internet talking to people. We won't get it. We need to stop, listen, write it down, think about it, ask your question, because your question here or your comment may benefit everybody. Ready? Yes? So let's go. I'm going to start sharing the slides. André Luiz begins sex and the spiritual body. He is telling us about the creative force of the soul and how our spiritual body evolves. To understand this chapter, I needed to give you some introduction. He's going to talk about plants, different types of plants, like you can see, as science says, and this is not André Luiz, this is just us giving you some background to understand the first paragraphs of the chapter. He talks about plants. Did you know that there are plants? Did you know that there are plants that are monoecious and dioecious? And this is in regards to also sex determination in plants. So like the corn, the fig, the cucumber, the melon, they are monoecious plants. Others like asparagus, for example, even the cannabis sativa, and others, they are considered dioecious. What does that mean? The monoecious plants, okay, they have their reproductive organs in the same plant. You have a different name for it, right? Hermaphrodite. Mhm. So they have the same in the same plant. While the dioecious have the male and the female in different plants of the same species. Look at this. A flower structures, just so we understand it. Because André Luiz is going to use these terms, and we won't be able to understand it unless we visualize right here. So a flower structure is like this. We have the receptacle, that comes from the stem, right? The ovule, look at the names here. I'm pointing with the mouse. And then we have what we call the filament, the anther, which forms the stamen. And then we have the carpel, the style, the stigma, the ovary. So this is the female and this is the male. Okay, the stamen, male. The carpel, female. In this case, it is a perfect flower, they call, because it contains both male and female organs. Okay, keep that in mind because André Luiz is going to mention something regarding this in the first paragraphs. He begins by saying to us, examining the sexual instinct in its complexity in the manifold lines of life. Remember that for millennia and millennia, the intelligent principle lingered on hermaphroditism in plants, for example, in phanerogams, whose flower stamens and pistils articulate respectively male and female elements. So that's what we just said. Let me show you another picture. Okay, unisexual, bisexual flowers, okay? So the flower that contains both, okay, they are considered to be hermaphrodites. In André Luiz terms, in science, we call it bisexual. Like you can see here, the mustard flower, the hibiscus flower. And in a way, we talk about the perfect flower being bisexual as well. Okay? This is science. André Luiz is saying that for millennia in the plant kingdom, we were experiencing this. Remember the Buddhist tale we've just said. Please do not take conclusions regarding sexual orientation. This chapter is above it all, okay? Let us not minimize the greatness of this study and just extrapolate to our sexual issues in our daily lives, okay? Keep ourselves pure in our absorbing elements. Then he says, long time was spent in the evolution of the sexual instinct in a variety of inferior animals, alternating stages of hermaphroditism and unisexuality, so that it will enhance the characteristics in the direction of the vertebrates. Okay, you may be asking, but Vanessa, what does that mean? I think here what is most important for us is to pay attention to what André Luiz is mentioning here. Let us observe, friends. Let us observe. Okay. Observe here when he says to us, the reasons why we may be like in inferior animals, we're not talking yet about primates, mammals, not talking about humans. Think about this. He's saying that remember, we do internships in matter, use a certain garment to acquire new characteristics, new virtues, right? What does that mean? It means that also the sex determination has a purpose. It has a purpose. That's very insightful. And he's going to say that we may experience this bisexual elements, hermaphrodite, or unisexual, right? Taking turns in inferior animals to enhance, expand our experiences, evolve. So, conclusion number one. Conclusion number one. There is a reason why we reincarnate in this body that is male or female or hermaphrodite. There is a reason. And it's sublime. We cannot take it for granted. And we cannot undermine it. Okay, so let's keep that in mind because this is one of the most important parts of this chapter to make us feel and understand that we are born and reborn yet again in different experiences related to sex determination because we need to enhance the characteristics for the next stages of our evolution. In this case, from inferior animals to the next class, the vertebrates. Okay? Keeping that in mind, we move on. So then he talks about, I will summarize it to you. Hermaphroditism and the fact, for example, if you take some frogs and if you castrate a male frog, okay, the ovary is going to be activated, becoming an adult ovary. Then he talks about the experimenting chicken, okay? He's going to talk about how, and this happens nowadays, we see many scientists doing experiments in the lab, enhancing with hormones, castrations, etc., to see how the system works. Conclusion. He's going to say to us, among all vertebrates, and particularly in human beings, o herdeiro, the heir of the most complicated psychic experiences, the human beings, okay, are subjected to the principles of genetics. Not only are the sex glands filled up with bipotential, but all the organic cosmos is susceptible to react to the hormones of the same sex or the opposite sex according to the psychical provisions of the personality. What is he saying here? That sex, okay, is not in the body. It's in the mind. Because the cells of the physical will respond to the different stimuli. So we are the ones who dictate the direction. He's going to continue talking about this action of the hormones, achieving unequivocal progress in its stimuli from the psychosoma of the protoform in superior animals to human beings, the spiritual body. He's saying the spiritual body determines broader range of hormones according to the position of the mind that serves the bodies. So to understand the physical, we need to understand the mental body, then the spiritual body. Inevitably. When people tell us, oh, I'm having hormonal issues, it's in the mind. That's why Luiz or psychosomatics, which now is a field of medicine, it's a branch of medicine. They say, if I'm having issues accepting my femininity or my masculinity, I am deep inside, in my mind, beliefs that's going to impact in the release of hormones that will affect my physical body. But everything begins in the mind. So our dear friend Felipe at the Spirit Side of Virginia tonight, as we're studying about well-being, he was asking a question, and the answer was, we can only heal when we learn to think correctly, harmoniously, in a divine direction. So our goal in this life is to master our minds, our feelings. That's our goal. And that in the mental body is going to dictate the release of hormones in the spiritual body, the perispirit, which will be imprinting in the physical body. So nowadays, people talk about hormonal therapy. But if you take hormonal therapy medication, it don't change your belief, your deepest belief, you're not going to heal. It's just going to be a band-aid. So go find what the psychosomatics say. So I need to accept the feminine. There are people who believe that being a woman is bad, that we're inferior, we're not good enough, we're weaker than men. You're going to have serious hormonal issues. That's a sure thing. And it's going to show in several parts of the body. And there are people that do not accept their masculinity. They feel guilty. And then comes impotency, remorse, and guilt, etc. So we need to observe the mind acting in our hormones. Then he says, the mobilized sexual glands are more complex. They exercise their own action through the hormones they segregate, casting it in the blood. They may be male or female hormones, which are expressed in the cyclopentane pyridrophenantrenal nucleus, joining the group of steroids. What he's saying here is just about the molecules. That's all it is, the hormonal molecules. We don't need to worry about these names. What he wants us to know is pretty much about everything begins in the mind. And that's exactly what comes next. The estrogenic hormones obey necessarily the impulses and determinations of the mind through the spiritual body. So again, my mind, the physical, and the spiritual. Out of study, I'm going to take here the book You Can Heal Your Life by Luiz. Go to the last part. And I say this because now medicine, and look at the studies by Christine Northrup and others, they absorbed the psychosomatic list of our dear friend Luiz and are researching. And I've read several papers that validate this teaching. So this is not esoteric teachings. It goes hand in hand with several teachings in Spiritism and current medicine. So I'm going to give you some ideas, okay, about how the mind affects our sexual life. For example, when people have yeast infection, okay, what is it? Anger at a mate, sexual guilt, punishing yourself. What do? Think. Others mirror the love and self-approval I have for myself. I rejoice in my sexuality. I'm going to read more, okay? Venereal disease, okay? Like AIDS, gonorrhea, herpes, syphilis. Sexual guilt. Need for punishment. Belief that the genitals are sinful or dirty, abusing another. So we need deep work. I lovingly and joyously accept my sexuality and its expression. I accept only thoughts that support me and make me feel good. I will read more. Okay, hold on. Almost there. Okay. Syphilis, giving away your power and effectiveness. I will read a little more. There's another one I want to read to you. It is very interesting too. Um, and it says to us, okay, hold on. I just missed the page. Oh, hold on, okay? Remember patience. We're practicing together. Prostate problems. That's the one I wanted to read. Mental fears weaken the masculinity. Giving up, sexual pressure and guilt, belief in aging. What is the new thought pattern? I love and approve of myself. I accept my own power. I am forever young in spirit. I'm giving you like PMS, right? We talk about hormones. Allowing confusion to reign, giving power to outside influences, rejection of the feminine process. So what's the new thought pattern? I now take charge of my mind and my life. I am a powerful, dynamic woman. Every part of my body functions perfectly. I love myself. I'm giving you some tips on how, and this book was written way past this 1958 book by Luiz, Evolution into Worlds. And current science keeps researching on this and telling us that really the mind dictates. Science cannot explain how. Spiritism does. Mental body imprints in the spiritual body, thus the physical body. So we want to achieve balance. We need to think properly. Okay? Christine. Hello, Rudy. Let me write it down. Dr. Christine Northrup. She is simply fantastic. Okay? That's not me. Okay, Christine Northrup. No. Okay? That's just, okay, show as, okay, color. Okay, let me just change it here. Christine Northrup. Okay? She wrote this amazing book. She's a gynecologist, very spiritual person, renowned person. She has a wonderful web page, several wonderful books. She makes us understand about our lives. It goes hand in hand with Andrea Luiz. Everything begins in the mind. I recommend her to everyone. Okay? Now, Andrea Luiz is now telling us more. Let's go. Say, Andrea Luiz, keep teaching us. We love your teachings. So he says, thank you for asking, Rudy. Okay, so I know it's a lot of text, but don't worry about it. We're reading it together. The heterosexual or bisexual effects of the glands and hormones. Understanding the resources of reproduction as gears and mechanisms that the spirit and evolution uses to mold physical forms, it is easy to recognize that the sexual glands and their hormones exhibit effects relatively specific. Undeniably, the ovarian female hormones are responsible for the distinctive female sex, but they can develop in the male as well as in the testicles and the hormones which correspond. This is clearly demonstrated in experiments of castration, hormone injections, and grafts. The gonads reflect the state of mind as a direct heir of countless experiences. It eventually produces a certain amount of heterosexual hormones, and in the same manner, even when sex hormones assert themselves with intense specific activity in determining events, perform this or that action in organs of the opposite sex. These are heterosexual or bisexual effects of the glands or hormones. So here, Andrea Luiz is just saying, look, the physical body in itself doesn't dictate anything. It is responding to the mind and the mold of the spiritual body. So as we have seen in the lab, if I castrate an animal and then naturally we're going to see the other side, sex determination, popping up, which tells us that the bisexuality is in the mind. In what sense? The feminine, the masculine. These are important things for us. We're destined as immortal spirits to acquire the expansion, the full spectrum of the masculine and the feminine together. It's hard to believe it, but look at Jesus, our guiding model. He came in the body of a male, or he wouldn't be able to do what he did, and yet he was still crucified. Besides that point, look at his determination. That's the masculine. Courage, masculine. Objectivity, masculine. Fearlessness, masculine. Now, compassion, feminine. Love, feminine. Forgiveness, feminine. So, one of the exercises we're going to propose for us to do at home, because if we do this, if we read this book and we don't feel it, there's no use. Think in the next 24 hours or make a list. Take a piece of paper, write masculine, feminine, and observe yourself. How are you doing in the characteristics of the masculine and the feminine? We're talking about the mind, not the physical body. And observe how the list is doing and your difficulties. And think about the fact that you were reincarnated in this life in either the masculine, the male, or the female body. And ask yourself, what am I to focus in this life in terms of the acquisitions of the masculine and the feminine? For example, indulgence, right? When we talk about charity, we're talking about a highly feminine approach. Altruism, it's highly feminine. And we're not talking about the men and women, we're talking about feminine, the mind. So, in order for us to expand to that level, we need to ask ourselves not to lose this reincarnation and stop the stubbornness. I don't want to open myself up. Well, but we need to. I am born in the body of a male. What are the masculine characteristics of the mind that I need to boost? That doesn't mean that I'm not going to boost the feminine in me. I will, but I will focus on that. Okay? So Rudy is asking about the book, right, Rudy? The book that I showed is You Can Heal, Your Life by Luiz. Hey. Oh, we love Luiz Hay. That's the book I talked about. Melissa, thank you for helping us, and I understand. And you're highly feminine, Melissa. Congratulations to you, because you embraced yourself in your feminine, and it feels good, right? So it feels good. Thank you, God. The masculine, the feminine, the male, everything is a blessing. But we need to embrace the blessing. So in this chapter, Andrea Luiz is asking us to see the sacredness of sex in our lives. Okay? All right. So as you can see, we are here for more. Okay, Andrea Luiz, show us more. He says, now, where did sexual instinct begin? Right? In the amoeba? No. Where was it? So let's see. In addition to the somatic resources, the physical resources, the soul keeps the intrinsic sexual individuality to define itself in masculinity or femininity according to the characteristic dramatically passive or clearly active of their own. The real origin of sex is not found this way in the physical vehicle, but in the spirit entity in its complex structure. I will say this, friends. This changes the whole spectrum of our understanding on sex. He continues. The sexual instinct, therefore, translating love expended in time, comes from the depths of life, still unapproachable to us, when groups of celestial monads, magnetically reunited with each other for the multimillenary work of evolution, as nuclei and electrons of the atoms, or the suns and the worlds in the microscopic systems of immensity. What is he saying? This, okay. Ow, the books are falling apart. Ay, ay, ay. Okay, books. Okay, so Leon Denis, this is Leon Denis, has a chapter on love in the After Death book, and he says to us, okay, hold on, because he has a sentence that is remarkable regarding exactly what Andrea Luiz is saying. He says, love is the celestial attraction of souls and worlds, the divine power that bonds, governs, and fertilizes the universes. Love is God's gaze. Love is to feel oneself live in all and for all, to devote oneself to a cause or to a being to the point of self-sacrifice of death. If you want to know what love is, just consider the great figure of humanity, Christ above all. Okay, all right. So Leon Denis is telling us exactly what our dear Andrea Luiz is confirming. It's in us. This sexual instinct is nothing more or less than this willingness to bond, to belong, to connect. So if you think in that direction and feel it, you're going to stop feeling guilty for the willingness of making connections. But we need to manage it in healthy ways, in sublime ways. The same force that attracts molecules to form a sun, a planet, or to attract cells to form a tissue and stay bonded together, is the same force that makes us connect with one another. There's no difference. Okay? So let's go back to Andrea Luiz, where he explains more. Because of that, creatures move from route to route in the domains of experimentation. Therefore, sex derives from the mind in its impulses and manifestations. Most incarnate conscious remain securely fitted to the mind-body synergy on its way to more vast complexity of knowledge and emotion. So sex is in our minds, is in our deep spiritual essence. It's that force of love inside of us making us gravitate toward others. Okay? And that's why he's going to talk about the series of steps we do to evolve in that force of attraction, in that force of binding force. He calls it evolution of love. As we distance ourselves from absolute animality for our integration with humanity, love takes higher dimensions, both for those who verticalize in virtue as to those who horizontalize in intelligence. He says, in the ones that verticalize in virtues, whose feelings elevate to higher spheres, love illuminates and purifies. But it is the sexual instinct in the most noble aspects, magnetizing the forces with alike forces in radiant ascent to God. This is the case of, right, Jesus, the higher spirits that are already working without any hidden agenda. They want to help, they want to love unconditionally. They are working that sexual instinct to make teamwork effort to help more people, more beings in the universe, versus the ones who keep themselves in the horizontal of intelligence, whose emotions are complicated. Love then is transubstantiated in the sexual instinct, in constant demand of immoderate satisfaction of the ego. So then I forget about God and my connection, and I need this person to feel good. I need that person to feel good. I need this being to feel good. That's a horizontal movement of that power, the force of love inside of us. So he says the first ones that verticalize learn to love with God, whereas the others that horizontalize aspire to be loved at any cost. Which one are you? Which one are you? That's homework. Do you want to love with God? With. You love with God because God loves everybody and everything. Or be loved at all cost. So you use your money, your power to force people into your life. If people don't want to be with you, leave it alone. You can't buy love, right? The Beatles song, Don't Buy Me Love, right? Don't buy me love. No, really, we can't. We've been there, done that. People don't want it, leave it alone. Don't show them your wallet. Hmm? Don't show them your influence, your power. That's ego. What did Jesus do? When he saw that some people didn't want him around, he respected them. He didn't buy them. He didn't impose himself onto others. That's true love. He loves us with God. Meanwhile, majority of people on earth want to be loved at any cost. So they manipulate out of fear, willing to be loved, which is a mirage. because we're loved by God. That's a sure thing. By people, it's going to take a while. But what matters is if we love. Okay, back to Andrea Luiz. He wants to tell us more, and we're ready for you, Andrea Luiz. He says, we need to educate our sexual life, he says, or we're going to be exhausted, unhappy, because we're going to keep bumping our heads in our sexual misconduct. And that's when he starts talking about polygamy and monogamy. He says, for many, many opportunities in life, the sexual instinct is polygamous, drawing itself to the learning route, okay? That will not escape from the math of fate that we create to ourselves. However, the more the soul is integrated in terms of moral responsibility towards life, the more it grasps the necessity of self-discipline in order to establish, with the new gift of love that is intrinsic to it, new programs of work that facilitate access to higher planes. Let me talk to you about the importance of teaching our children when age is appropriate to love their bodies, not abuse their bodies, and neither the bodies of others. Disciplining themselves, saying, hold your horses. How do I discipline myself? Visualizing myself in control of my physical body. Remember what Emmanuel says, seek the good, feel the good, visualize the good. Oh, but I have a hard time with self-discipline. Visualize yourself waking up, feeling in control. Talk to the cells of your reproductive organs. Emmanuel gave those tips to Chico Xavier, and Chico Xavier started talking to his reproductive organs, saying, I know the testicles, everything, saying, I know what you guys want. But how about, he used to say, bringing that energy up to my brain so I can work and help others. So he asked for partnership with the cells of the physical body. Talk to the cells of the body. Develop a relationship of kindness to the physical body. Remember, the physical body represents trillions of cells that are like little animals, like little pets. Let us work with it, being a good owner, disciplining it with kindness. We can no longer enslave it, right? Abuse it, we cannot. Andrea Luiz then, he says that we are going to find that sex, sorry I'm skipping some images, but I want to give you a summary of some chunks of the book, or we won't be able to understand it fully. Sex is not only for reproduction. That's something quite interesting, he says. That's why he titles this part Spiritual Food. He says, sexual instinct is not just a reproduction agent among higher forms, but above all, it is the reconstitution of the spiritual forces by which the incarnate and discarnate individuals feed off mutually in the exchange of psychomagnetic, psychic magnetic rays needed to their progress. What does he say? Look at Jesus. Well, Jesus didn't have children, right? Well, we don't want to talk about Dan Brown and people saying that he actually did, but if the law of reproduction in the Spirit's book is an actual law, and he is the guiding model of humanity, how did he fulfill the law of reproduction? Do you know the answer? I'm not going to say that I know the answer, but I have a hypothesis. Well, it's not reproduction of the physical body. We're talking about what? This spiritual exchange of nourishment. Yes, that's why in his first appearance to the public, it's an engagement party, right? The nuptial, because it's like getting married to us, creating a bond with us, a commitment, showing to us that he's committed to our growth. This is the creative force of the soul. He is also a co-creator, and Jesus, as a co-creator, fulfilled the law of reproduction by bringing to us the best, by getting us all feel that we are one with him, feeding each other mutually in exchanges of our mental magnetic race towards progress. Okay? So he says, the sanctified spirits in whose evolved nature the sexual instinct becomes divine, okay? When they are unified with glorified spirits, they collect from similar entities sublimated magnetic loads released in spiritual ecstasy. I remember somebody once asking me, but Vanessa, if my entertainment nowadays is to get together with my friends and drink, but as you evolve, your entertainment is going to be a spiritual ecstasy. What? Doing the good, helping others. It's true nourishment. Better than anything else we have ever seen. Isn't that what you feel when you do a spiritist event or you do an outreach program? And when you're together, you're in such ecstasy. When you go home, you keep feeling that for days. The same process, but sublimated. Instead of being among people, physical exchange, we're talking about an expansion. It's even bigger. So André Luiz now tells us that on the other hand, the primitive souls will often spend strength in excess that imposes on them hard lessons. And that's when he talks about the end of the chapter, which is about the diseases of the sexual instinct. If we don't know how to manage our sexual instinct, we're going to become sick. So he explains the magnetic charges of instinct accumulated and overflowing in the personality, to the lack of solid inner help that channels in the direction of goodness, obliterate the still vacillating faculties of discernment. Like the famished, alien to common sense. The individual who lacks sexual balance tends to surrender to rebelliousness and madness in spiritual syndromes of jealousy or spite. In the face of reproductive torture that the individual feels relegated, they generate afflictive karmic debts, lashing the soul in space and delaying their progress in time. So here we need to pay attention to magnetic charges of the instinct. Remember, the mind, mental, okay, thought is mental electromagnetic force. It comes from the mind. Sex comes from the mind. It's that impulse of attraction that brings us all together. And it has magnetism, so it attracts. If we don't use discernment, common sense, as he says, we're going to imbalance ourselves. Unbalancing ourselves, we start being susceptible to these feelings that are so low, jealousy, spite, etc. Thus, we create what he says psychoneurosis, generating nervous breakdowns, phobias, conversion hysteria, anxiety, anguish, diversion of the libido, obsessive neurosis, psychosis, mental fixations. And he says, these happen, okay, because we had our creative energy of sex imbalanced. So Freud was right. Psychoanalysis, saying that at the end of the day, it comes from the sexual instinct that is disturbed. But then Spiritism comes and says we can boost our discernment and tame those energies, sublimate it. Through the ages, we forge uneasiness and problems for others through our sexual misconduct. We need to solve those problems at proper occasion. How? Receiving as children and associates of destination within the home boundaries all those constituted creditors of our love and of our renunciation, crossing very often unspeakable sufferings to ensure them the necessary recuperation. So here I'm going to recommend another book, okay? This time is André Luiz' book, Sex and Destiny, by André Luiz, through Chico Xavier. Please read it, because this book, Sex and Destiny, shows exactly what André Luiz is saying. He's saying, okay, we're going to make mistakes, misconduct, and then those that we hurt are going to come back as our children. As our children. So, embrace them and give them the best. Sex and Destiny, including grandchildren. So, keep an eye on this one, because André Luiz is saying there is a solution, reincarnation. Okay? And now we go back to André Luiz when he says, we must therefore understand that sex resides in the mind. This is his take-home message at the end of the book. We must therefore understand that sex resides in the mind, expressing itself in the spiritual body, and consequently in the physical body, as creative sanctuary for our love towards life. And because of this, no one derides it, unbalancing its forces without disharmonizing and mocking themselves. So, André Luiz, throughout this chapter, he was saying, time and again repeating this. Do not blame yourself for feeling this sexual instinct. Educate it. It comes from the mind. We're supposed, as Leon Denis says in the book After Death, we are supposed to mingle, to be together, but we need discernment not to abuse this well-being of being together. We need to administer this sexual instinct, verticalizing it, sublimating it. How do we sublimate it? By doing the good, by taking good care of this physical body. And good care means kindness, loving kindness with the physical body. Talk to yourselves. Teach your children about the loving kindness to the body. When they fall and hurt their body, we say, oh, tell your body that you're sorry, that you didn't notice and you let it hurt. Okay? Because it's like a pet that needs us. Plus, Luiz is saying, the take-home message here, when we reincarnate in the body of male and female, there is a reason to expand the feminine and the masculine in us. So our homework is to think about the masculine and the feminine in us, and to see how we can, in this reincarnation, with the resources we have at hand, to boost it. Don't look at society, what society thinks is right, because society doesn't know about it. But now you know, because Spiritism is always at the vanguard. And the question for us is, are we willing to love with God or to be loved at any cost? It's our choice. We have been choosing for many lives, and it doesn't look good. Now we have a chance to revisit it all and be better co-creators by accepting the opportunity that we have as expansion for our true selves, the feminine and the masculine. Okay, friends? Tomorrow when we come back, since Sandra Luiz talked about reincarnation, we're going to talk about evolution, spiritual body, and reincarnation. For now, we thank you very much for being with us, for being together. Let us then thank God for Chico Xavier and Valdo Vieira's efforts in bringing these teachings by André Luiz to us. Thank you, God. And if you're going to experience Thanksgiving, happy Thanksgiving. Let us express our gratitude by giving more of ourselves to everyone whom we live with, including our communities. A big hug, Kardec Radio, nourishing your soul today and always.